Commander June stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The Galactic Council station looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with hundreds of ships from different worlds docked around it. His hands were sweaty inside his uniform gloves, but he tried to stay calm. "First time meeting aliens," communications officer he said with a nervous smile. "I hope we don't mess this up." "We won't," June replied, though he felt just as nervous. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. Ever since they discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago, they knew other intelligent life must exist. Now they were about to meet them. Tactical Officer Sung checked his weapons display one more time. "All weapons are powered down as ordered, Commander. We're showing them we come in peace." Science Officer Na looked up from her scanner readings. "I'm detecting over 40 different ship designs. The galaxy is more crowded than we thought. The Harmony was humanity's best ship, but compared to some of the vessels around the station, it looked small and simple." June had been chosen to lead this mission because of his calm nature and diplomatic training. Earth's leaders wanted to make a good first impression. "Incoming transmission," he announced. "It's from the station." "Put it on screen," June ordered. The main display changed to show a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. Its voice was translated by their computer into English. "Human vessel, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. Welcome to the Galactic Council. I am Administrator Kelmoth. We are curious to meet your species." "Thank you, Administrator. I'm Commander June of Earth. We're honored to be here." The docking went smoothly. As they walked through the station's corridors, the human team saw dozens of different alien species. Some looked almost human. Others were completely strange. Many stopped to stare at the humans with curious eyes. "They seem friendly enough," Na whispered. "Stay alert," Sung replied quietly. "Friendly doesn't always mean safe." They were led to a large meeting room where representatives from 12 major galactic civilizations waited. The humans took their seats at a round table that had been specially modified to accommodate different body types. "Humans of Earth," said a regal-looking alien with golden skin. "I am Council Speaker Mordoon. We have heard interesting things about your rapid technological development." June stood and bowed slightly. "Thank you for this opportunity. Humanity seeks only peaceful contact and mutual benefit with all galactic civilizations." "How refreshing," said a voice from across the table. The speaker was large and muscular with gray skin and red eyes. "Another primitive species that thinks it can simply join our ranks." "Admiral Vexthul," Speaker Mordoon said with a warning tone. "Please show respect for our guests." The gray alien laughed. "Respect? For these hairless apes? Look at them, Speaker. They can barely contain their fear. Their ship is a pathetic toy compared to our vessels." June felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "We may be new to galactic society, but we're eager to learn and contribute." "Contribute?" Vexthul stood up, towering over the table. "You have 3 small colonies and a handful of ships. What could you possibly offer us?" "Peace and friendship," June replied. The Velkan Admiral's laughter was loud and harsh. "Peace is for the strong human. The weak provide other services." Several council members looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. June began to realize that the Galactic Council might not be as civilized as Earth had hoped. "Perhaps we should discuss trade agreements," he suggested, trying to change the subject. "Oh, we'll discuss terms," Vexthul said with a cruel smile. "But not the kind you're expecting." Suddenly, armed Velkan soldiers entered the room from multiple doors. Their weapons were already raised and pointed at the humans. "What is the meaning of this?" Speaker Mordoon demanded. "A demonstration," Vexthul replied calmly. "The council has grown soft. Too many weak species are being allowed to join. It's time to show what happens to those who don't know their place." Sung reached for his sidearm, but a Velkan energy bolt caught him in the chest. He fell to the floor, unconscious but alive. "Don't move," Vexthul ordered the remaining humans. "You came here to negotiate." "Let's negotiate," June's mind raced. This was clearly a setup, but why? "What do you want?" "Your 3 colony worlds will become Velkan territories. Your species will serve as workers for our empire. In return, we'll let most of your people live." "The council will never allow this," Na said angrily. Vexthul looked around the room. "The council says nothing because they know the truth. Strength rules the galaxy. Everything else is just pretty words." Indeed, the other council members sat silently, Some looked ashamed, others afraid, but none acted. "We won't surrender our worlds," June said firmly. "I was hoping you'd say that." Vexthal activated a device on his arm. "Begin the recording. I want the entire galaxy to see this." What followed was the most brutal hour in human history. The Velkans tortured the diplomatic team slowly, methodically. They broke bones, burned flesh, and asked the same question over and over. "Will you surrender?" Each time the humans refused. He died first. Her last words were, "Earth will remember." Na lasted longer, using her scientific mind to insult Velkan intelligence until they silenced her forever. Sung never woke up from the first energy blast, dying peacefully compared to the others. June was saved for last. As the only survivor, he was forced to watch his team die before his own torture began. "Your final words, human," Vexthal said, holding a blade to June's throat. "What message do you want to send to your people?" With his last strength, June looked directly into the recording device. Blood ran down his face, but his voice was clear and strong. "Earth, you have seen what they did to us. We came in peace. We offered friendship. Remember this moment. Remember their faces, and know that you have made a grave mistake." The blade fell, but June didn't die immediately. He used his final moments to activate his ship's emergency beacon, transmitting everything to Earth. The recording was broadcast across the galaxy, as Vexthal had promised. Most species watched with indifference or mild concern. The humans were just another weak species being put in their place. The Velkans celebrated their easy victory and immediately claimed humanity's 3 colony worlds. They expected quick surrender from the shocked human government. Instead, they received only silence. Earth's response was a single message, transmitted to every human settlement. "Diplomacy is dead. Prepare for war." 6 months had passed since the diplomatic massacre. The galaxy had mostly forgotten about the small human species that had been so publicly humiliated. The Velkans enjoyed their 3 new colony worlds, using the human settlers as forced labor. Life continued as normal for most galactic civilizations. But something was happening in the dark corners of human space. Admiral Wu stood in the secret military facility on Luna, Earth's moon. The base had been built inside ancient lava tubes, completely hidden from any scanning technology. Around her, thousands of workers moved with purpose, building weapons that had never existed before. "Status report," she ordered. "All shipyards are operating at maximum capacity," reported her aide. "We've completed 200 stealth fighters and 50 heavy cruisers. The Dreadnought project is ahead of schedule." Wu nodded. The Dreadnoughts were humanity's secret weapon. Each one was 5 times larger than their previous biggest ship. More importantly, they were designed with one purpose: total destruction. In another section of the base, Engineer Yoon was working on something that made even hardened soldiers uncomfortable. She stood before a massive production line, creating weapons that violated every known rule of civilized warfare. "The virus bombs are ready," she announced to her team. "Each one is specifically designed to target Velkan biology. Their immune systems have no defense against human diseases." "What about other species?" asked her assistant. "Harmless to everyone else. But for Velkans, it will be a slow, painful death." The project had taken months of careful research. Human scientists had studied every piece of Velkan biology they could find in galactic databases. They learned what the aliens ate, how they breathed, what chemicals their bodies needed to survive. Then they designed weapons to attack each system. In the medical wing, Dr. Tay was developing something even worse. He had been humanity's leading expert on biological warfare before first contact. Now he was applying his knowledge to alien physiology. "The neural disruptor is complete," he told his research team. "One dose will destroy a Velkan's ability to think clearly. They'll become confused, paranoid, and violent. They'll turn on their own people." "How long does it last?" someone asked. "It doesn't. The effect is permanent." Dr. Tay had also created other biological weapons, chemicals that would make Velkan food taste like poison, gases that would cause their skin to burn, diseases that would make them go blind. Each weapon was carefully tested on Velkan prisoners taken from the occupied colonies. The prisoners had been rescued in secret raids that the Velkans didn't even know had happened. Small human teams would slip onto the occupied worlds, free a few prisoners, and disappear. The Velkans assumed the missing prisoners had simply died from overwork. Captain So commanded the largest shipyard in human space. The facility was built in the asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks, Her job was to create humanity's new fleet, and she was very good at her job. "How many ships do we have now?" she asked her construction chief. 800 combat vessels, Admiral, plus 3,000 support ships, and the special projects are almost ready. The special projects were Captain So's proudest achievement, suicide ships that looked exactly like civilian vessels. Each one was packed with enough explosives to destroy a space station. The pilots were volunteers who had lost family members in the occupied colonies. "The pilots are all trained and ready," the construction chief continued. "They know they won't be coming back. They know their sacrifice will be remembered," Captain So replied. "Their families will be honored forever." Meanwhile, strategist Kyung was planning something that went far beyond military targets. In a secure room deep underground, she studied holographic maps of the entire Velkan Empire. "Their military bases are obvious targets," she explained to her planning committee. "But we're not just fighting their military. We're fighting their entire civilization." Red dots marked Velkan worlds on the map. Blue dots showed their trade routes. Green dots indicated cultural and religious sites. "Every red dot gets a military strike," Kyung continued. "Every blue dot gets disrupted by our stealth ships. Every green dot gets completely destroyed." "What about civilian populations?" asked one of the planners. "What about our civilians who are enslaved on their worlds?" Kyung replied coldly. "They chose to make this personal when they tortured our diplomats. Now we make them regret that choice." The plan was simple but terrifying. Humanity would not just defeat the Velkan military. They would erase Velkan civilization from existence. Their art, their history, their culture, their people, everything would be destroyed. On Earth, the general population knew something was happening, but not the details. They saw family members disappear into military service. They watched as factories stopped making civilian goods and started producing unknown military equipment. They heard rumors of secret bases and special weapons. Most humans supported whatever was being planned. The video of their diplomats being tortured had been shown on every news channel. Everyone had seen He, Na, and Sung die slowly while begging for mercy that never came. Everyone had heard Jun's final words. The few humans who suggested negotiation or mercy were quickly silenced by their neighbors. This was not a time for weakness. This was a time for justice. In the Galactic Council, intelligence reports about human activity were largely ignored. Most species assumed humanity was simply preparing defensive measures. The few analysts who suggested humanity might be planning offensive action were laughed at. "They're primitives," Admiral Vexthul told his staff. "They have 3 little colonies and maybe 100 ships. What could they possibly do against our empire?" The Velkans had over 10,000 worlds and the largest military in the galaxy. They controlled major trade routes and had defense agreements with dozens of other species. The idea that humans could threaten them seemed ridiculous, but some intelligence officers were not so confident. They noticed that human space had gone completely silent. No trade ships, no communication signals, no diplomatic contact. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. "Maybe they're planning to surrender," suggested one Velkan general. "Or maybe they're all dead from some disease," added. Another Admiral Vexthul preferred the surrender theory. "They're probably preparing some kind of formal submission. Humans are emotional creatures. They need time to accept reality." None of them considered the truth, that humanity was using the time to prepare for total war. The final preparations were almost complete. In hidden bases throughout human space, millions of soldiers trained for combat that would show no mercy. In secret laboratories, scientists perfected weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. In underground command centers, strategists planned the complete destruction of an entire galactic civilization. Humanity had learned an important lesson from their first contact with the galaxy. Peace was a luxury that only the strong could afford. Mercy was a weakness that led to slavery and death. They would not make that mistake again. Admiral Wu stood on the observation deck of humanity's first completed dreadnought. The ship was so large it had its own gravity and atmosphere. Its weapons could destroy entire cities from orbit. Its armor could survive almost any attack, but the dreadnought was not just a weapon. It was a symbol. It represented what humanity had become in 6 short months. They had evolved from peaceful explorers to something much darker. "All fleets report ready, Admiral," her communications officer announced. "And the special weapons? Loaded and armed on every ship." Admiral Wu smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "Then it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you murder human diplomats. The war was about to begin. Admiral Vexthal was enjoying his morning meal when the first reports came in. His aide burst into his private dining room, face pale with panic. "Admiral, our border stations are under attack." Vexthal set down his drink slowly. "Pirates again? Send a patrol squadron to deal with them." "No, sir, it's not pirates. It's humans," the Admiral laughed. "Humans, those cowards? How many ships?" We don't know, sir. They appeared without warning. No signals, no demands. They just started shooting." Vexthal's smile faded. He followed his aide to the command center where chaos reigned. Communications officers were shouting into their headsets. Tactical displays showed red warning lights across multiple star systems. "Report," Vexthal demanded. 17 border stations have gone silent," the tactical officer replied. 23 patrol squadrons are not responding. We're receiving distress calls from 6 colony worlds. That's impossible. The humans don't have enough ships to attack that many targets. "Sir, we're getting emergency transmissions from Admiral Korth's fleet." The main screen activated, showing Admiral Korth's command ship. The bridge was on fire and bodies floated in the smoke. "This is Admiral Korth." The transmission crackled. "We're under attack by unknown vessels. They're using some kind of suicide ships. They're ramming our—" The transmission cut to static. Fleet Admiral Ho watched the Velkin command ship explode from the bridge of her dreadnought. Around her, human officers monitored dozens of simultaneous attacks across Velkin space. "Target destroyed," her weapons officer reported. "Moving to next objective." "What about survivors?" asked a young ensign. Ho turned to look at him with cold eyes. "What survivors?" "Did the Velkins worry about survivors when they tortured our diplomats?" The ensign looked away. He had been at the academy when the massacre video was broadcast. Like every human, he had memorized every second of his people's suffering. "All ships continue the attack," Ho ordered. "Remember your training. No mercy, no prisoners, no survivors." The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves. They attacked without warning, used weapons that violated every rule of civilized warfare, and showed no interest in honor or fair combat. Captain Hay led the ground assault on Velkin Colony 7. Her troops landed in small, fast ships that scattered when the planetary defenses fired. By the time the Velkins realized what was happening, human soldiers were already in their cities. "Biological weapons deployed," reported her chemical warfare specialist. "The virus should spread through their water supply within hours. And the neural disruptors? Released into their air circulation systems. The effects should begin shortly." Captain Hay watched through her binoculars as Velkin civilians began to stumble in the streets. The neural disruptor was working perfectly. Soon they would become confused and paranoid, turning on each other in violent rage. "Phase 2 is ready," her demolitions expert announced. "Execute." Explosions rocked the Velkin city as critical infrastructure was destroyed. Power plants, water treatment facilities, hospitals, schools, everything that made civilized life possible was systematically eliminated. But the humans didn't stop there. They began broadcasting recordings through the city's communication system. The recordings showed Velkin atrocities against human prisoners. Over and over, the Velkins heard their own leaders bragging about torturing humans. "Psychological warfare is effective," Captain Hay noted. "They're starting to panic." Within hours, Velkin Colony 7 had descended into chaos. The biological weapons made them sick. The neural disruptors made them crazy. The psychological broadcasts made them angry at their own government. Most terrifying of all, the humans seemed to enjoy watching them suffer. In space, Commander Jin was preparing humanity's most shocking weapon. His ship approached a major Velkin space station that served as a trade hub for 12-star systems. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," his communications officer announced. Jin activated the recorder. His message would be transmitted to every civilized species in the galaxy. "To all who can hear this transmission, I am Commander Jin of the Human Defense Force. 6 months ago, Admiral Vexthal and his Velkin Empire murdered our diplomatic team. They tortured our people and broadcast their deaths as entertainment." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The Galactic Council did nothing. They sat and watched while our diplomats begged for mercy. They allowed the Velkins to enslave our people and steal our worlds." Another pause. "Today, humanity teaches the galaxy a new lesson. When you threaten our family, when you murder our people, when you think we are weak, this is what happens." Jin nodded to his weapons officer. "Fire!" The space station exploded in a brilliant flash. 50,000 Velkans died instantly, but that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that half of them had been civilians, families, children, merchants, artists, all vaporized without warning or mercy. The galaxy watched in horror as the transmission continued to broadcast from human ships across Velkan space. Every attack was recorded. Every death was documented. Every act of brutality was shared with the entire civilized universe. Colonel Yule led his troops through a Velkan military base. The enemy soldiers had surrendered after watching their comrades die from biological weapons. They knelt with their hands behind their heads, expecting to be taken prisoner. "What are your orders for the prisoners, Colonel?" asked his sergeant. Yule looked at the kneeling Velkans. Some were young, barely adults. Others were older veterans with families. All of them looked terrified. "Remember what they did to Commander June," Yule said quietly. "Remember how they made him watch his team die?" The sergeant nodded and raised his weapon. "But sir," protested a young soldier, "they've surrendered. The rules of war say—" "The rules of war died when they tortured our diplomats," Yule interrupted. "Execute them all." The sound of gunfire echoed through the base. When it stopped, no Velkans remained alive. Major Bin was conducting psychological warfare on a Velkan colony world. Her teams had captured the planetary governor's family, his wife and 3 children. They were being held in the central square while the governor watched from his office. "Please," the governor begged over the communication link. "They're innocent. Take me instead." "Were our diplomats innocent?" Major Bin replied. "Were the children in our colonies innocent when you enslaved them?" "That was different. That was war!" "No," Bin said calmly. "That was your choice. This is war." She activated a device that broadcast the governor's family's location to every Velkan on the planet. Then she released neural disruptor gas into the crowd that had gathered to watch. Within minutes, the confused and angry Velkans had torn the governor's family apart with their bare hands. The governor watched it all happen, screaming helplessly from his office window. "Surrender your world," Bin ordered, "or we'll do the same thing to every family on this planet." The planet surrendered within the hour. Back at Velkan High Command, Admiral Vexthul was finally beginning to understand what humanity had become. Reports flooded in from across his empire. Colonies were falling. Military bases were being overrun. Entire fleets were disappearing without a trace. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "We estimate at least 3,000 combat vessels," his intelligence officer replied. "But sir, that's not the problem." "What do you mean?" "They're not fighting like a civilized species. They're using biological weapons, suicide attacks, psychological torture. They're targeting civilians, destroying cultural sites, executing prisoners." Vexthul felt ice in his veins. "They can't do that." "The Galactic Council will—" "The Council is already receiving reports," his aide interrupted. "They're horrified, but they're also terrified. The humans are proving that our entire way of war is obsolete." On the main display, another Velkan world went dark. Then another. Then 3 more. "How do we stop them?" Vexthul whispered. His officers had no answer. "How do you fight an enemy that doesn't follow any rules? How do you defeat people who would rather die than show mercy?" For the first time in his career, Admiral Vexthul realized he might have made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just angry. They weren't just seeking revenge. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had embraced total, merciless war. And they were winning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 civilizations sat in stunned silence as they watched the latest reports from Velkan space. "The humans have destroyed another colony world," Chancellor Mordoon announced, his golden skin pale with shock. "That makes 18 planets completely sterilized. No survivors. How is this possible?" asked the representative from the Aquarian Federation. "Our report said humanity was a peaceful species." "They were peaceful," replied the Zephyr Coalition ambassador, "until the Velkans murdered their diplomats." On the main display, satellite footage showed the surface of Velkan Prime 7. What had once been a thriving world with 2 billion inhabitants was now a burning wasteland. The humans had not just conquered it, they had made it uninhabitable for any form of life. "This goes beyond war," whispered the Crystalline Collective's speaker. "This is systematic extermination." General Yu stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching as her forces prepared for the next phase of their campaign. Around her, human officers worked with calm efficiency. After months of constant warfare, genocide had become routine. "Status report on the cultural sites?" she asked. "All Velkin museums have been destroyed," her aide replied. "Their historical archives are being systematically erased. The teams are now moving on to religious centers and artistic monuments." "Good. What about the children?" "The re-education camps are operational. Velkin young are being separated from their families and taught human values. They are learning to speak only English and are being told their people were evil." General Yu nodded with satisfaction. It wasn't enough to kill the Velkins. Their culture, their history, their very identity had to be erased. Future generations would know nothing of Velkin civilization except what humans chose to teach them. "The breeding programs," she continued, also proceeding, "we're using genetic modification to ensure future Velkin generations will be more compliant, less aggressive, more submissive. Within a few generations, they'll be perfect servants." Back at the Galactic Council, the debate was growing heated. "We must intervene," declared the representative from the hegemony of stars. "The humans have clearly lost all sense of civilization." "With what army?" Chancellor Mordoon asked. "Half our member species are already moving their fleets away from human space. They're terrified. Because the humans are monsters," shouted another representative. "No," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Na, sister of the murdered scientist from the original human diplomatic team. She had somehow survived the initial massacre and had been rescued by human forces months later. "They're not monsters," she continued, walking slowly to the center of the chamber. "They're exactly what you made them." "You can't possibly support this brutality," Chancellor Mordoon said. Ambassador Na smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Her time in Velkin prison camps had changed her. The optimistic scientist who had dreamed of peaceful contact was gone, replaced by something harder. "Support it? I helped plan it." Her words sent a chill through the chamber. "You want to know why humans are destroying the Velkins? Because you taught us that mercy is weakness." She activated a recording device. The chamber filled with the sounds of her brother's torture, the same recording that had been broadcast to Earth 6 months earlier. "Listen to him beg," she said calmly. "Listen to him offer everything humanity had in exchange for his life." "What did the Velkins do?" "They laughed." The recording continued. The sounds of pain and suffering echoed through the chamber. "You all sat here and watched. None of you said a word. You let them turn our peace mission into a horror show for your entertainment." Several representatives looked uncomfortable, but none spoke. "So we learned," Ambassador Na continued. "We learned that the galaxy respects only strength. We learned that mercy gets you enslaved. We learned that if you want to survive, you have to be willing to do things that terrify your enemies." "But surely," Chancellor Mordoon said desperately, "surely you can show some mercy now." "The Velkins are already defeated, are they?" Na asked. "Because last week they were still using our people as slaves. Last week they were still bragging about torturing our diplomats. Last week they were still planning to expand their empire." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The only way to ensure they never threaten humanity again is to ensure they never exist." "Again? You're talking about genocide," another representative said in horror. "I'm talking about justice," Na replied coldly. On the main screen, new reports were coming in. Human forces had captured a major Velkin nursery world where young Velkins were raised in massive communal centers. Captain Yoon led the assault personally. She walked through the captured facility, past thousands of terrified young Velkins huddled in their sleeping areas. "What are your orders, Captain?" asked her lieutenant. Yoon looked at the young aliens. Some were barely more than babies. Others were adolescents. All of them looked at her with fearful eyes. "Set up cameras," she ordered. "We're going to broadcast this." "Ma'am, the galaxy needs to understand that we're serious. Load the transport ships." Within hours, the entire galaxy was watching as human soldiers loaded thousands of young Velkins onto transport ships. The children cried for their parents. Some tried to run and were shot down by human soldiers. "This is Captain Yoon of the Human Defense Force." Her voice echoed across galactic communication networks. "You're watching the future of the Velkin species. These children represent their only hope for survival." The transports lifted off and flew directly into the system's star. "Every day the Galactic Council delays action against us," Yoon continued. Another nursery world dies. Every day you threaten sanctions against humanity, we eliminate another generation of Velkans. She looked directly into the camera. We have identified 37 nursery worlds in Velkan space. This was the first. Interfere with our war and we'll destroy them all. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in shocked silence. Back in the council chamber, several representatives were openly weeping. The sight of children being murdered had broken something fundamental in their understanding of warfare. This has to stop, Chancellor Mordoon said. It will stop, Ambassador Na replied. When the last Velkan dies, what about the other species? What happens when humanity decides we're also threats? Na's smile became even colder. That depends entirely on how you treat us from now on. The implication was clear. Humanity had learned that the galaxy was not a civilized place. It was a jungle where the strong preyed on the weak. They had decided to become the apex predators. Reports continued to flood in. Human forces were systematically destroying every trace of Velkan civilization. Libraries burned. Art galleries were looted and destroyed. Scientists were executed. Poets were silenced forever. More disturbing were reports of human behavior. Soldiers who had once been peaceful farmers were now torturing prisoners for information they didn't need. Scientists who had once worked to cure diseases were now creating new plagues. Children who had grown up learning about peace and cooperation were now volunteering for suicide missions. What happened to them? Asked one representative quietly. They adapted, Na replied. Humans are very good at adapting. You showed us that kindness gets you killed, so we stopped being kind. The economic impact was already devastating. Trade routes that passed near human space were abandoned. Merchant ships refused to travel anywhere humans might be operating. The galactic stock market was in free fall as species panicked about humanity's next move. They're destroying the entire galactic economy, complained the Trade Federation representative. Good, Na said. Maybe economic pressure will teach you not to murder diplomats. But we didn't murder your diplomats. The Velkans did, and you let them. You watched and did nothing. That makes you complicit. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity wasn't just punishing the Velkans. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. This is what happens to anyone who hurts humans. What do you want? Chancellor Mordoon asked finally. Complete Velkan extinction, Na replied without hesitation. Every man, woman, and child. Every trace of their culture erased. Their world sterilized and empty. And if we agree to this, genocide, then humanity might consider being civilized again. Might consider following the rules of war. Might consider showing mercy to future enemies. And if we refuse, Ambassador Na's smile was terrifying. Then we expand our definition of enemies. The chamber fell silent. Outside reports were coming in of human ships massing near the borders of other star nations. The implication was obvious. Cooperate or become the next target. You have 48 hours to decide, Na announced. After that, we assume the galaxy has chosen to protect the Velkans, and we respond accordingly. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind representatives who were finally beginning to understand what humanity had become. The galaxy's nightmare was just beginning. 3 years after first contact, the last Velkan in the universe died screaming in a human laboratory on Earth. Dr. Tay watched through the observation window as subject V47891 succumbed to the final test of humanity's biological weapons program. That's the end of them, his assistant noted, making a final entry in the research log. No, Dr. Tay corrected. That's the beginning of everything else. The extinct Velkan had been kept alive for months, serving as a living test subject for weapons that would never be used against his species again. There were no more Velkans left to kill. Instead, these weapons were being designed for future enemies, whoever they might be. Admiral June stood among the ruins of the Velkan homeworld. The planet that had once been home to 50 billion beings was now a barren wasteland. Human terraforming equipment was already beginning to reshape it for human colonization. The scars on his face had healed, but they served as a permanent reminder of that first diplomatic mission. Around him stood the survivors of humanity's transformation. Admiral Wu, whose fleets now patrolled half the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Ho, whose tactics had redefined the meaning of total war. Ambassador Na, whose diplomacy now consisted of threats and ultimatums. Final status report, June ordered. All Velkan military forces eliminated, reported Admiral Wu. Their fleet of 12,000 ships has been completely destroyed. No survivors. Civilian populations? 0. The last population center was sterilized yesterday. Total Velkan death count, 437 billion individuals. Cultural sites and historical records, completely erased, added General Yu. Their language exists only in our translation databases. Their art has been destroyed. Their history has been rewritten to show them as the aggressors who brought destruction upon themselves. Admiral June nodded with satisfaction. The Velkans had not simply been defeated. They had been removed from existence as if they had never existed at all. And the other species? Complying fully with our demands, Ambassador Na replied. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to grant humanity all former Velkan territory. They've also agreed to our other terms. The terms had been simple and non-negotiable. Every major species would pay tribute to humanity for protection services. Human monitoring stations would be established in every star system to ensure compliance. Any species that objected would join the Velkans in extinction. What about resistance movements? There was a small rebellion among the Aquarian Federation, Admiral Ho reported. 3 of their worlds declared independence from galactic government and refused to pay tribute. And their suns went supernova yesterday. 40 billion dead. The remaining Aquarian worlds have doubled their tribute payments. June walked to the edge of a massive crater that had once been the Velkan capital city. In the distance, human construction robots were building the foundation for a new human city. Soon, this world would be indistinguishable from Earth. Broadcast our message to the galaxy, he ordered. The transmission was sent from the ruins of the Velkan homeworld to every inhabited system in the galaxy. June's scarred face appeared on billions of screens across hundreds of species. To all civilizations of the galaxy, he began, I am Admiral June, Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Force. 3 years ago, I led a peaceful diplomatic mission to your Galactic Council. We came offering friendship and cooperation. The image shifted to show the torture and execution of the original diplomatic team. The galaxy had seen this recording many times, but it still made entire populations flinch in horror. This was your response to our friendship. You tortured our people. You broadcast their deaths for entertainment. You enslaved our colonies and stole our worlds. The image shifted again, showing the systematic destruction of Velkan civilization, cities burning, ships exploding, millions dying in biological weapon attacks. This was our response to your cruelty. The Velkan Empire is gone. Not defeated. Not conquered, gone. 400 billion Velkans have paid for the crimes of their leaders. Their species exists only in historical records that we control. June's voice became harder, more threatening. Some of you believe this was excessive. Some of you think we went too far. Let me be very clear about our position. We don't care what you think. The image now showed human fleets positioned throughout galactic space. Massive dreadnoughts patrolled trade routes. Human monitoring stations watched every major world. Humanity now controls 30% of galactic space. We possess weapons that can sterilize entire worlds. We have proven our willingness to use them without mercy or hesitation. A new image appeared. The Aquarian worlds dying as their suns exploded. The Aquarians learned this lesson 3 days ago. 40 billion died because their leaders thought they could resist human authority. Their rebellion lasted exactly 6 hours. June paused, letting the implications sink in across the galaxy. We are establishing a new order. Human monitoring stations will be built in every star system. All species will pay tribute to humanity for protection against future misunderstandings. Trade routes will be regulated by human authorities. Technological development will be supervised by human scientists. These are not requests. These are not negotiations. These are facts. Any species that objects will be given one opportunity to reconsider. If they refuse, they will join the Velkans in extinction. The transmission showed human ships moving toward the borders of every major civilization. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. You showed us that mercy is weakness. You demonstrated that the strong prey upon the weak without consequence. June's smile was cold and terrifying. Congratulations. We learned your lessons perfectly. The transmission shifted to show a massive ceremony on Earth. Millions of humans gathered in memorial parks built around the names of their murdered diplomats. Children placed flowers on monuments dedicated to He, Na, sung, and the thousands of other humans who had died in Velkan slave camps. Our dead heroes taught us an important truth. The universe is not a civilized place. Peace exists only when everyone is too afraid to start a war. Mercy is a luxury that only the victorious can afford. The ceremony showed human children singing songs about the Great War. They sang about brave soldiers who had avenged their people. They sang about the importance of strength and the danger of weakness. They sang about the day humanity became the galaxy's master. A new generation of humans is growing up, June continued. They will never know the weakness of their parents. They will never offer friendship to those who might betray it. They will never show mercy to those who threaten human lives. This generation will rule the galaxy with strength and wisdom. They will ensure that no species ever again dares to harm a human diplomat. The transmission ended with a simple message displayed across every screen in galactic space. The galaxy belongs to humanity now. Obey or die. 10 years later, the new order was firmly established. Human children learned galactic history from textbooks that barely mentioned the Velkans. When they were mentioned, it was only as an example of what happened to species that threatened humanity. Other species' children learned different lessons. They were taught that humans were not cruel, but firm. They were not evil, but practical. They had done what was necessary to ensure galactic peace. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humanity had discovered that fear was the most effective form of diplomacy. On Earth, in the Hall of Eternal Memory, the names of the original diplomatic team were carved in black stone. Underneath their names was a simple inscription: "They died as humans. We avenged them as monsters." Tourists from across the galaxy came to read those words. They left quietly, carrying the message back to their homeworlds. Never threaten humanity. Admiral June, now elderly and honored as humanity's greatest hero, often visited the memorial. He would stand before the names of his murdered friends and remember the moment everything changed. "We kept our promise," he would whisper to their memory. "The galaxy trembles at our name. No one will ever again mistake human kindness for human weakness." In the end, humanity had learned the galaxy's most important lesson. It's better to be feared than loved. It's safer to be strong than merciful, and it's more effective to rule through terror than through hope. The Velkans had wanted to teach humanity its place in the galactic order. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Humanity's place was at the top, and they intended to stay there forever.